Today, we're diving deep into extraordinary developments unfolding across Europe right now. We've got a stunning breakdown at the EU summit that's sending shockwaves through Brussels. Germany's new government is planning something absolutely massive with your money. There's a bizarre investigation happening in Spain that raises serious questions. We'll look at what's brewing for internet freedom in 2026. Plus, Hungary's having a moment nobody saw coming, and I've saved the most intriguing part for the very end. Trust me on this one. I spent years inside one of those big mainstream outlets, watching how they'd massage stories to fit whatever narrative the powers that be wanted that week. Eventually, I couldn't stomach it anymore. Walked away from that whole machine. Now I answer to nobody but you. And I tell you what's actually happening without the spin cycle. And listen, I need to ask something from you right now. If what I'm bringing you matters, hit that like button, smash subscribe. But more than that, if you can support this channel through sponsorship, please consider it. We're out here doing the hard work of fact-checking, verifying sources, making sure we're not feeding you garbage. That takes time, it takes resources, and frankly, it takes courage in this environment. Your support keeps this independence alive, and please, stay with me until the end, because what I'm holding back is genuinely the most fascinating piece of this entire puzzle. So let's talk about what just happened in Brussels, because this is huge. The European Union leaders gathered for their summit, and they completely failed to reach agreement on a reparation loan for Ukraine. Now, the key issue here was the immediate use of frozen Russian assets. That got kicked down the road. Instead, they've decided to go with joint debt to finance a loan worth 90 billion euros. Now, about that trade agreement between the EU and Mercosur, that's the South American bloc, including Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay. That complex issue got pushed to January next year. They couldn't reach unity, so EU members decided to take extra time for coordination. Italy influenced this decision, calling immediate signing of the deal premature at the Brussels summit. The summit was also accompanied by massive farmer protests in Brussels. It was very loud, very disruptive. Farmers were demanding to be heard, and you know what? They have every right to be angry because for years now their interests have been completely ignored. The protests got noticed, but they didn't cancel the Mercosur deal, not at all, just postponed it until mid-January. Besides Italy, Poland is against the agreement too. France also supported postponing the signing. The reason? Mass discontent among French farmers after a mysterious outbreak of cattle disease, just as mysterious actually as the outbreak of African swine fever in Spain. And Spain, let me remind you, is the largest pork producer in Europe. There, they believe the outbreak is connected to a laboratory leak. Because of this, a court has already ordered raids on laboratories to find out who's really behind them and what they're actually doing in there. Spanish police have already conducted a raid on a research laboratory in Catalonia as part of the investigation into African swine fever. The strain, as officially stated, matches laboratory samples. They'll check at least 4 more scientific centers located near the outbreak zone. There are way too many labs in the area, frankly. We'll see what they announce after the inspections are complete. The investigation continues, but authorities have refused further comment since more detailed materials in this case remain sealed by the court. Almost simultaneously, Germany is buzzing with discussion, both in mass media and on social networks. The federal government under Friedrich Merz, whose popularity is rapidly falling as everyone knows, plans to borrow a record 512 billion euros. That's more than during the pandemic era. The funds are needed, as reported, for large-scale investments in defense. That's the main thing. The interests of military-industrial companies matter here, especially BlackRock, which former Chancellor Friedrich Merz previously worked for. BlackRock traditionally ranks among the largest investors in European defense companies, including Rheinmetall. Funds are also needed for infrastructure and to cover budget obligations. Discontent on social networks is naturally growing. Government popularity is dropping. There's also discussion of new advice to German citizens, how to get electricity for free, apparently. Reports say there's a boom in Germany for solar panels that can be installed, particularly on balconies. Electricity produced by such balcony panels is half the price of power from the grid. They pay for themselves in 4 to 7 years. After that, electricity for panel owners becomes free. Moreover, these systems include battery storage. This means excess electricity can be saved for later use. That's the kind of practical advice experts gave on how the population can get free electricity. Also, an unusual incident occurred today in Saxony. Early in the morning, unknown perpetrators deliberately cut down a large decorated Christmas tree on the old market square in the city of Lubao. Emergency service workers had to remove the damaged tree. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. That's the most important thing. Police are now investigating this incident. There's never been a case like this before, where in Germany someone cut down a city holiday tree on the eve of Christmas celebration. But here's where it gets interesting. Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia are sitting this one out completely. 24 out of 27 EU countries are going through the European Commission to take out these joint loans, 90 billion euros backed by guarantees from the EU budget itself. The expenses fall on European community countries, but nobody's figured out who's covering the interest on this loan. According to diplomats, that particular point just popped up during the summit itself. Not exactly a sign of careful planning, is it? And the main news agency of the European Union, Euronews, is being brutally honest about this. They're calling it a flat-out defeat for German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who was leading this entire effort. It didn't work. Belgium demanded unlimited guarantees, and that made the whole plan unacceptable. This is also a loss for Ursula von der Leyen, head of the European Commission, who presented this project alongside Merz as the best option for the EU. In the end, they had to turn to what they're now admitting is a worse, less favorable solution for the 24 participating countries. Meanwhile, Belgium's Prime Minister is getting praised back home for defending his country's position at the summit. Belgium's Defence Minister declared it excellent work. Several Belgian members of the European Parliament backed the summit results too, saying Belgium managed to make itself heard, showed everyone they need to be taken seriously, so while Merz and von der Leyen are licking their wounds, Belgium's walking away looking strong. And here's where things get even more intriguing. They're also hotly discussing new plans in EU leadership. The European Commission has identified fighting alleged disinformation as a priority task for the next year, 2026. Why does this matter? It's simple. Preparation is underway for strict internet regulation, from social media algorithms to personal correspondence. For the first time, we might be talking not just about fake news, but about access to encrypted data, which affects the privacy of millions of users. Supporters of such measures believe it's necessary to protect society and especially minors. Critics see it as censorship and restriction of free speech. In essence, in 2026, EU leadership wants to build what they're calling a democracy shield against disinformation. But that shield might just turn into a filter on free speech and privacy. Remarks precisely on this topic, restrictions on free speech and so on, directed at European Union leadership and Britain in particular, have been sounding from the United States for a long time now. We're watching to see what happens next. The intrigue continues there. What else will they prepare? That's where the intrigue lies. If you're still with me, drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from, and don't forget that subscribe button matters more than you think. And immediately on the holiday theme, it's worth adding this because it's being discussed very actively. Hungary is breaking records for the number of guests. Just at the beginning of December, 18 million people visited the country. The Christmas and New Year season, with its traditional influx of tourists, is still ahead. Visitors from different corners pay tribute to Hungarian hospitality and say local residents are very responsive and friendly. Although Hungary is considered one of the safest countries in the European Union, against the backdrop of a steady increase in the number of visitors, the country will still begin taking initial restrictive measures. They've already been introduced in other cities popular with tourists, for example, Venice and Prague. In one district of Budapest, they're introducing restrictions on short-term housing rentals due to an excess of tourists and a shortage of housing for long-term rental. It's not excluded that other quarters of the Hungarian capital will follow this example over time. But in Poland, they've acknowledged more than half of citizens expressed dissatisfaction with the work of Prime Minister Donald Tusk and his government. People are unhappy. Only 37% of Poles spoke positively about their government's actions. Basically 1 percentage point fewer satisfied people. 52% of citizens have a negative attitude toward the government in Poland. On the theme of recent new protests, it's absolutely necessary to add this. Last night in Bulgaria, a large-scale anti-government protest took place. Thousands of Bulgarians came out to protest against the outgoing government, demanding honest elections, and this is the most important part, and judicial reform. People's trust, as you understand, is becoming less and less, especially after the recent elections in Romania. Regarding the actively discussed reports from the United States, as expected, American President Donald Trump stated he doesn't rule out the possibility of conflict with Venezuela. At the same time, Trump refused to clarify whether removing Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro is his ultimate goal. It's worth noting the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress failed a vote on 2 resolutions that aim to limit the powers of the Trump administration regarding military operations in the Caribbean and against Venezuela. Both initiatives were proposed by Democratic representatives, naturally, who were trying to require Trump to obtain congressional permission for conducting military actions, but unsuccessfully. Also, American President Donald Trump ordered the suspension of the green card lottery after a tragic incident at Brown University. So for those dreaming of moving to the United States, such opportunities are decreasing. The visa lottery is closing for now. According to the president, to ensure no American suffers any more from this harmful program, he ordered it stopped. But let's leave all that complicated stuff aside for now. There's an interesting moment today from the United States. Everything in our time is changing, you know about this. And ties are no exception to these rules. The American world-famous brand Brooks Brothers is releasing and promoting as a fashionable trend ties in the shape of animals. If, for example, a kitty isn't to your liking, you can choose options with a raccoon, a rat, or an otter. Different options available. So if you meet a person with such a tie, don't be surprised. It's just a fashionista who's keeping up with the times. Their desire to be on trend doesn't scare them from appearing strange to others, because strange today is the new style. Such times, such style, you could say it that way. And we're living, as you've noticed, in very interesting times with very interesting people. So let's take a step back and look at what all of this really means. The EU summit breakdown over Ukraine financing reveals deep fractures in European unity. Germany's Merz suffers a humiliating defeat just as his government plans record borrowing. Laboratory investigations in Spain raise uncomfortable questions about what's really happening in research facilities. The EU's push for digital control in 2026 threatens the very freedoms they claim to protect. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens across Europe, from farmers to everyday people, are increasingly taking to the streets because they've lost faith in their leaders. And that brings us to the most fascinating piece I promised you. Look at the pattern here. Every single story we covered today connects to the same fundamental issue. Trust. Trust in institutions is collapsing. Trust in government decisions is evaporating. Trust in the official narratives is disappearing, whether it's EU leaders unable to agree on basic financial arrangements, mysterious disease outbreaks near laboratories, or governments planning unprecedented censorship in the name of protecting democracy. People aren't buying it anymore. That's the real story underneath all of this. If this kind of analysis matters to you, if you want to keep getting the truth without the corporate filter, please hit that like button right now, subscribe to this channel, and seriously consider sponsoring our work. We're doing something important here, bringing you facts and context that the mainstream won't touch. Your support makes this possible. I want to hear from you. What do you think about everything that's happening and everything I've said here? Write your opinions in the comments. I wish you peaceful skies, and I'll see you tomorrow. May the news always be good. Take care of yourselves. Before we wrap up today, I want to take a moment to talk with you directly, because this matters. What we're building here together is something genuinely different. While mainstream outlets are beholden to corporate interests, advertisers, and political agendas, this channel answers only to you. That independence is precious, but it doesn't come without cost. Every video you watch here represents hours of work. I'm sifting through sources in multiple languages, cross-referencing information, verifying claims, making sure what I bring you is accurate and truthful. In an age where misinformation spreads faster than facts, that verification process is absolutely critical. I refuse to feed you garbage just to chase clicks or push some predetermined narrative. That's exactly what I walked away from in mainstream media. This kind of journalism, this commitment to truth, requires resources. It requires time. It requires dedication. And honestly, it requires your support to keep going. If you find value in what we're doing here, if this analysis helps you make sense of our chaotic world, I'm asking you to be part of this mission. Hit that like button, because it genuinely helps push these videos to more people who need this perspective. Subscribe so you never miss what's happening. But beyond that, if you're able, please consider becoming a channel sponsor or using super thanks to support this work directly. Your contributions, whatever they might be, aren't just financial support. They're a statement. They're saying you believe independent journalism matters. They're saying you want media that respects your intelligence and tells you the truth. And please, leave your thoughts in the comments. This isn't a one-way street. I want to hear your perspectives, your questions, your insights. You're not just viewers, you're part of a community that values truth over propaganda. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about what's really happening in our world. Together, we're building something that matters. I'll see you in the next one.